right, welcome. This is AdTalk by AdClass. I'm Dakota, and I'm here with
Caleb Cruz. What's up, guys?
What's up, Caleb?
I'm ready for this one.
We are
chatting about TikTok.
Yes, we're talking about TikTok today. So, great episode coming in today, guys. I think in the news and recently, just honestly, it's hard to avoid this topic with anyone you talk to. So I'm excited to dig into it. Today we're talking about, like Caleb said, TikTok. So all things TikTok when it comes to advertising. Obviously, that's what we do here at AdClass is we run ads, and we do run ads on TikTok. So we're going to dig into that a little bit. But there's so much more to talk about with TikTok. So we're really going to get into kind of the nitty gritty today on what's going on in the news with TikTok, politics, right? Is it going to get banned? If it gets banned, what the heck are we going to do? Right? All sorts of things to talk about. But first and foremost, I kind of want to just like start off the discussion by saying how we personally have used TikTok, Caleb. I think like that's a good place to start because I talk to a lot of people and most of them think, whether they're business owners or, you know, just friends of mine or whatever, a lot of them think that TikTok is specifically a young person platform, right? Like they kind of view it as like Gen Z or even like, what's the generation before Gen Z? I don't remember what. Zoomers? Is that what they're? No, that's Gen Z. There's one younger. I don't remember what they're called right now. But they're, you know, when you think TikTok, you kind of think high school aged, right? Like middle school, high school, maybe college age people. But honestly, it might be one of my most used apps too. And, you know, I'm a millennial, I'm 29. So kind of want to talk through like, how do we use the app, right? So what about you, Caleb? Are you a TikToker? What, Matthew?
You just said the generation that was before Generation Z.
Well, after maybe.
It's millennial.
I mean, after. Younger. Younger means before in my mind. Is that not what you think of younger being?
I know, because I was gonna say Gen X, but I was like, there's no way that or Gen Y, but I was like, there's no way that's what he's talking about. But I don't know.
Hey guys, I know I'm a millennial. Let me just say, I know what a millennial is. I'm trying to say, what is before, meaning younger than Gen Z? Matthew, can you do some Googling? We need to know.
I'm looking it up.
Gen ZA. They just add one.
Yeah. Or they just switch to numbers. It's Gen 1.
Oh.
It's Generation Alpha.
Hey, you're basically right,
Alpha.
Caleb.
Yeah.
Alpha. Okay, so when you think of TikTok, a lot of people think Generation Z, Generation Alpha, the young people, right? What about you though, Caleb? Do you use TikTok?
Not the way that I use other apps. I think I jumped on like the TikTok train when everyone's like, oh, you got to be on it, right? Like you got to like get there. Every business owner, every entrepreneur is kind of like, you know, if you're not on TikTok, you're going to get left behind. So I think I kind of joined on with everybody then. I still don't use it the way that you do though. Like I still will say that when I go to like if I'm going to mindlessly scroll, which I try to not do, I usually find myself doing that on Instagram, not TikTok.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I think that's probably true of a lot of millennials. Now, when you say that you're mindlessly scrolling on Instagram, are you talking about the feed or are you talking about shorts or
all of the above? If I'm like just sitting, like, let's just say like, I'm done with work for the day, had a nice dinner. If I just find myself like, okay, like I'm just going to pop on, see what everyone's doing. I'll open Instagram and I'll do all the above. I'm searching the feed or scrolling through the feed. I'm clicking through stories. I don't find myself watching reels a ton unless they're in my feed. Like I don't do a lot of like reel, like just sit in the reel tab and just look at reels. I don't really do
How
that.
come? So. Because it's going to be relevant to our discussion in a bit here. Because TikTok basically is that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it is that. And I think that's part of why I don't use it as much. And I think it's because when I'm on Instagram, what I'm really trying to do is just kind of stay in the loop with what like my network is doing, right? Like my friends, my family, people that are kind of in my space. And I just kind of like to see their updates. And I feel like a lot of times when I'm moving through reels, of course you get a little bit of that. Like you'll get a couple of updates, but a lot of times you're getting like people who you don't follow, or if it is someone that you follow, it might be like, you know, hey, here's 3 tips on this, or hey, here's this cool thing I'm like, or whatever. And it's more like education based. Whereas like, I kind of like to just get like updates, if that makes sense. Like, hey, I'm doing this thing this today, kind of a thing.
Yeah,
you know,
I love that. I think that's the big difference between TikTok and the social media apps that we grew up kind of using and that have become popular for us, right? So TikTok has kind of taken the world by storm, because when you think of young people, and at least in my opinion, you know, I used to teach high school, what they were all obsessed with were YouTube primarily, right? YouTube was kind of like their big thing. And then they used a lot of Snapchat back then. This was like 4 or 5 years ago. Snapchat was huge still. And the kind of they're two different worlds, right? Like YouTube at that time was like discovery, like learn something new, follow the creators. You don't have a personal relationship with these people, but you're being entertained. It's like a TV show for them, right? Like YouTube, in my mind, is like the new generation of TV. So that was that sphere. Sure. Yeah. And then there was like Snapchat, which is how they actually connected with their friends, right? Like they actually talked to people they know, they kept up with people they know. For us millennials, it's always been first it was MySpace, right? MySpace was like, what are my friends up to? And then it went into Facebook. I joined Facebook and like,
Dakota, you would have totally been in my top 5.
Dude, thank you. I think it was top 8 though, but yeah, good try. Yeah, you would have been like at least top 3
hey, even if it was
8,
you would have been in my top 5.
Thanks, man. That you got me tearing up over here, dude. You gonna put me? How savage was the MySpace top 8? Let me just back up. That was our first foray into social media, and it was a dog eat dog world.
It's like, hey, Dakota, you didn't come to my birthday party. I'm taking you off my top 8.
Dude. You're out of here. No, you would load up someone's MySpace profile and a song would start blaring instantly, right? It would be like, this is the way I live, you know? And then you're like scrolling through the page and you go to the top 8. And first of all, the whole theme is HTML coded. Like mine was like black and pink, you know, punk rock basically. And then you get to the top 8 and the feeling of your heart sinking when like your crush didn't have you in their top 8 was like the very first experience of like cyberbullying that I think any of us ever had to deal with, you know?
For sure.
Sad, bro.
For sure. Sad. I'm glad that doesn't exist anymore. I'm glad that doesn't exist.
Anyways, we went from like Facebook or from MySpace, which was like how we connected with friends, to Facebook, right? And then Instagram came out and it was like, oh, this is like the cool new way to connect with friends. Pictures. But basically we've in the last like 2 or 3 years, I feel like we have missed a lot of that actual connection from these apps, and they have become more entertainment, at least in my opinion, right? Like I go on Instagram and a lot of the people I see posts from are not actually my friends, right? They're like people I follow. So TikTok came into the picture and basically said, we don't even want to be like a friend connection app. Like that's not even part of what we want to do. We just want to entertain you. And what they were able to do is create an algorithm that was so dang specific to what you're interested in, just through how much you watch videos, what you like, what you share with people, who you follow, that eventually it is so dialed in that when you swipe through TikTok, every single video is something that you want to see and that you can share with people who are similar to you. Like for example, my friend and I, Sam, most of our text threads are us sharing TikToks that we think the other person would be interested in, because it's that dialed in to what our interests are. And so it's this new like entertainment platform that we've just never even seen before. Right.
Yeah. Which is super cool. I think, you know, like I haven't used it a ton for that, but then again, it's probably just because, again, like I said, I'm really focused on using my social media time to just kind of stay connected with like people. And so I guess I just haven't like had a deep dive yet into the getting lost in the TikTok world.
Don't do it. That would be my advice, bro. You wait, you open the app and then you blink twice and it's been an hour and you're like, did I watch like
what happened?
60 videos in the last hour?
I won't lie, I did do that once when I found a guy's page that like he was doing these insane video edits to where it like was like mind-bending type video edits where you can't tell if it's like real or fake. Those things that I got sucked into a black hole once with that. But like
all right, so now that we've kind of talked through what TikTok is, and for the audience out there that hasn't ever used it, I would recommend just downloading the app, because the algorithm is pretty insane, right? It does kind of show you what the future of entertainment could look like. For all of the pros, there are a ton of cons, right? These are short videos. They're designed to keep your attention very, very snappy, right? Like there's a lot of danger, in my opinion, especially for kids on this app that like,
I was about to say, especially in the youth. Yeah. Like if you get used to that being what you have to entertain yourself, it's like you can't keep your focus for more than 30 seconds.
And it's no different from like a Mr. Beast video, right? Like it's the same way, or snappy cuts, quick edits, like entertain me, do something else big, do something else crazy, right? Like it's just the attention span is crazy right now with, I mean, I notice it in myself. It's not just young people, right? And so there is a lot of cons, right? But the stats are pretty staggering. There is about as much video watch time on TikTok right now as there is on YouTube, right? So people are consuming this.
That's so crazy.
And that brings us to kind of what's happening in the news right now, right? So Caleb, I know you're not super up to date on it, so I'll fill you in on kind of the timeline here. Basically, for the last like 3 years, there's been pushes by the federal government and local governments now too, we'll get to that in a second, to ban TikTok, right? Now, that's never been done before. Like no one has banned a social media app before in our country, right? And that's the first thing that's of note here, because when you really sit back and think about it, social media is a way that people express themselves. It's sort of like a First Amendment right, you know, like to go on the internet and make something, right? And so it's never ever been like proposed to ban a social media app before. It's tough to ban a website, you know. It has to really be like an illegal website. So you might ask why, right? I'm sure most people would ask why. And really it comes down to just sort of like inter-country politics. So TikTok is owned by a company that's China-based. So, you know, of course, all of this data that we're talking about that feeds the algorithm, basically, that tells us what videos to show us and what we like and what we don't like and all that stuff, is theoretically being sent to China, right? And so people don't like that because China is obviously one of our Uber competitors. We don't agree with what's going on in China for the most part politically. And so, you know, the politicians here in America are basically like, hey, we don't want them to have the upper hand on us in any way, shape, or form. We don't want them to have our data, basically, right? So back in 2020, Trump tries to ban TikTok because he's afraid they're harvesting info. The ban gets blocked, right, by a federal judge, basically saying like, First Amendment, man, you can't just like ban an app. So then Biden takes over, he drops the ban attempts, but he does call for like a review of all social media apps and like the security threats that they pose to society, right? You've seen, I mean, as advertisers, we've seen a huge change in like data collection in the last couple of years.
Oh, for sure.
And that's all part of this, right? Like we don't need to know everything about everybody that uses the internet, basically. It's kind of the end story, right? 2022 happens. Oracle takes control of the US based TikTok traffic. And so for basically, this is a big piece of the plot line, right? Oracle is a huge data company. Most of our social media data actually goes to Oracle here in the US. And then like they like hash it, and that's what the social media companies get. Like they don't have like straight access to our data necessarily. And TikTok now is part of that. So anybody that uses TikTok in our country, the data goes to Oracle, which is in California, I think. You know, I have to fact check me on that. And that's kind of where it's stored. So it's stored here on our soil, right? And that's really important because every other social media app is that same way, right? It's not in China, it's here. Come back to that in a second. So then that's June of 2022. December of 2022, Forbes puts an article out claiming that journalists are being tracked through TikTok by China. Leads to a federal ban of the app on lawmakers' phones. That's a big piece. And then March of this year, so we're now in 2023, lawmakers are proposing the Restrict Act, which basically, bans Chinese technology in the US. So it's not just TikTok. It's pretty sweeping. Like we are just like, hey, China, we don't want your tech here. See ya, right? And then that's when you might have seen like some of the snippets of the TikTok CEO testifying before Congress, talking about the fact that they don't store the data in China, talking about, you know, all that. And some of the reps asking questions like, does TikTok connect to my Wi-Fi network? And he's like, Yeah, like everything else does, you know. And you're starting to be like, oh shoot, why are boomers asking these questions? You know? Like, can we ask a more sophisticated question, maybe? It was wild, actually.
That's pretty great.
All right, and then finally, catching us up to speed this week, the state of Montana, right? Like the entire state,
good old Montana,
passed a bill banning TikTok. Okay, so basically they made it a crime to use TikTok in the state of Montana, and you know, I'm sure
that's huge.
That's crazy. Like, that's a big one, right? Like, that's something that could now quickly expand to other states, maybe federal. You know, we don't know.
How are they like enforcing this? Is it like a thing where it's like if you have an IP address in that state, the like app is no longer?
It will definitely be IP based, yeah. Because I know people are talking about VPNs already and how to, you know, access it outside of their connection. But I don't know about the Montana one. I haven't looked into that specifically, but I know the federal one that they were proposing made it like a felony to use TikTok, like a real crime.
That's crazy.
So yeah. Anyways, so long story short, a lot of weird stuff happening politically there. We don't need to get too into the weeds on that, but let it be known for the people at home that like there's a pretty fair chance that your state or our country as a whole bans this app in the near future, right? And so what does that mean for us, right? What does that mean for us as like internet users and as advertisers? Caleb, what do you think? Where does your brain go?
Oh my gosh, it means so much. Yeah, it means so much. I mean, we just talked about it that I don't use the app a ton, but I mean, I think the first thing, I guess if you want to throw it out, there's all of the people who are currently spending multiple hours per day on the app, right? Like, where do they go to? I think right off the hop, the like obvious answers would be either A, YouTube Shorts, or B, Instagram Reels. I guess C, you could say like Facebook Reels or something, but I think YouTube and Instagram Reels are really kind of the two people who will start to probably take the traffic. But I think the other really interesting piece of this is that with all of this attention, right, there have been a ton of businesses that have been built off the back of TikTok, right? You have certain marketing firms that are like TikTok focused, educators that
creators.
are TikTok focused.
I mean, like
e-com
people have blown up on that platform.
Totally blown up, right? So I think that's huge, right? Is there's going to be like all of the businesses that have been relying on the TikTok base and like the TikTok traffic and like running ads there, selling their products and their offers there, like that's going to be huge for them. They're going to have they got to figure something out, right? Like if that goes away, okay, well, where do I get my customers?
Yeah, and like,
right? Or where does my audience
exactly
go?
And the problem I think that most of these TikTok creators are facing is that like the algorithm isn't as good on these other platforms, right? So TikTok came out, made this short form video thing popular because of the amount of work they put into the algorithm, to where it's like it knows what to show you based on so many nuanced factors, right? Then Instagram tries to copy it, Facebook and Instagram try to copy it, you know, YouTube tries to copy it, but when you scroll through the Reels or the Shorts feed on those apps, it's nowhere near as sophisticated. And there's a running joke actually that like people on TikTok see something and then 2 months later the people that use Instagram Reels see it, right? And it's basically like this delayed like
it's which I think is totally true.
Yeah, oh, completely.
It's totally true.
It's sort of like on the West Coast, like, you know, if you live in LA, you're wearing like the current style. And then like the people on like the East Coast in like, you know, Georgia, but that's just an example, are like 2 years behind the style, right? They're like wearing like the style that was popular in pop culture 2 years ago. It's the same way with like TikTok and Instagram. And so the creators that are on Instagram now and are on TikTok now and are making money and like crushing it, they have huge followings. That following doesn't necessarily translate to another platform, right? And so now they have to find ways to like monetize themselves on other platforms and get people's eyeballs on other platforms, which is very hard if the algorithm's not as sophisticated.
I know one of the things that's been kind of tossed around is, well, okay, if they're going to just outright ban TikTok, like in the US, what if there was going to be some sort of US buyout, right? Where like a US based company could kind of control TikTok. And if they were to do that, obviously in that scenario, the app could be saved, right? And I think that's probably what most creators would probably be hoping for, right? Rather than like if the alternative is, well, you just can't use the app anymore, you know? So yeah, what are your thoughts there? Do you think that's like possible or like
I think
likely?
it's somewhat likely. It just depends on. So I think it's pretty likely, actually, if I was to predict, because basically the percentage of users on TikTok skews pretty heavy to the US. Like, I think it's somewhat
Mm-hmm.
popular worldwide, but I know US specifically is like, it's very popular. So I'm assuming a big chunk of their revenue comes from US users. And if that's the case,
Mm-hmm.
as a CEO of TikTok, or as like, the board of TikTok, they're probably looking at this as like, hey, listen, if they ban us, or they like are very serious about going forward with this ban, we probably need to sell, because like we're about to lose half or more of our user base, or our ad revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think that they would think
That's
about
so
it,
oh, man, that's so crazy.
yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. And I don't know. I'm just like, I'm thinking about this at like world scale, right? If you were like, like hovering over the world, looking down at this kind of playing between the countries, it's so crazy to me, like how powerful of a country America really is that like another country can have a successful app. And if we're like, hey, we don't like that, we can just be like, we're gonna ban it, and then either you go bankrupt or we'll just
Yeah,
buy it out from
right.
you. Like that is some serious
I
power
know.
and control, dude. Like that's
And
wild.
and it's funny
That
because
is
I
wild.
think it comes down to like our culture. Like, yes, we're powerful in terms of economics, but we're very powerful when it comes to trends and what's big like in the world. Pop culture is still very much
Mm,
like a
mhm,
United States centered thing. Like, we sort
mhm.
of determine what the trends are. Um, uh, and I think that's true in social media, especially. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Like, they'll still make their money. Don't, like, it's not like they're going to be like,
Yeah,
oh, dang,
yeah.
like, it would stink to have to sell, but like, also they're selling for like a lot of money, if they do sell.
For sure, for
But
sure,
yeah,
for
it's
sure.
wild to think about. But okay, so let's talk about the hypothetical scenario of it gets banned, right? What does that mean
Mhm.
for advertisers? I think that'd be a very first place to go. I guess we should start by saying, what are we doing on TikTok now? Do we spend a lot on TikTok? Kind of, what does that look like for AdClass?
Yeah. Yeah, so, for us particularly, we are spending on TikTok for, like, some of the clients that we work with and help, but it's not the majority of spend. So, I would say, I mean, Dakota, across the board for all of our clients, I'd say what TikTok is probably between 10
True.
to 20% probably of the spend. Yeah, so somewhere around that ballpark, right, for, like, if you compare, like, all the platforms on what we're spending, right? Um and so I think how it affects us is, well, the good thing is that the majority of our spend isn't there. So like if we need to pivot away, we can kind of move that to Google or Meta, right? And just transfer spend over to those platforms. And I would say that for us also, we don't have any existing businesses or clients that are solely dependent on
Right.
TikTok. That's another big thing. Is like there is no one that's like, oh my gosh, TikTok is everything, right? So I think for us in particular, we're pretty safe. Now, I think that for advertisers, obviously, that are like TikTok focused, if I'm them, one, I'd be hoping and praying that there's a buyout and that it stays in the
Yeah.
US. That's kind of the thing. But we can't base our business decisions off of hopes and prayers that something's going to happen, right? So I think if I'm them, then what I'm doing is I'm finding like what's the next best alternative, right? So looking at potential YouTube shorts or Instagram reels, and I would start prepping clients and business owners and the people that I work with that, hey, look, we should start getting some spend over to these other platforms and testing things just in case you have a safety
Yeah.
net if anything were to happen, right? And so I don't know, that's where my brain goes. I'm not sure
Totally, dude. Yeah.
where
And
you
in
go, but
I mean, the reality is, like, as an advertising platform, TikTok has left a lot to be desired. Like, I know people that are spending a
mhm,
lot on TikTok, but it's not, it's like, for how sophisticated their organic algorithm is, their ad targeting is not nearly as sophisticated. I've found, like, you can get
mhm,
leads, you can get people interested in your business, but they're not typically like high intent purchasers, is kind of what we've seen.
yep,
So I don't know that necessarily it being banned is going to matter too much for advertisers as much. I think it will come down to like those creators. Like, there's very niche creators on TikTok that just probably won't find a home on other platforms. YouTube is the only one that I really think could potentially support them. But there's people on TikTok that I follow
mhm,
that like just do one thing, like they make TikToks every day on one specific thing. And it's like, it could be as weird as like building cuckoo clocks, you know what I mean? And there's like cuckoo clock talk, and it's like, these are the people that build cuckoo clocks, and if you're interested in that, you follow them. Like that on Instagram, that's not going to work, right? There's no virality to it. But on TikTok, it finds the cuckoo clock people, and every cuckoo clock person in the US saw that video, and so there is some version of virality. On like Instagram and Facebook, that just does not exist, right? And so it has to be a YouTube thing, I guess. But it's just so hard to translate.
Yeah, I would say YouTube.
Yeah.
If it's me, like if you ask me, hey, I'm currently on TikTok, and if I need a backup platform, what do I choose? I would say YouTube. Like that's where my guy goes as well. I think that you're spot on with that. In my opinion, YouTube is kind of like going to be the future of all of that anyways. I mean, like it's already like the biggest in terms of like, I mean, you said TikTok is matching it in watch times, but if TikTok goes away, okay, well now YouTube is the king of that again. Right. And I mean, it's just, I think that's still at the end of the day where creators are incentivized the most to grow. And so long term, I think it's got to be that. You know what
and
I mean?
they also like when they came out with YouTube Shorts, which if you guys don't know about YouTube Shorts, it's their version of TikTok, right? You can open the YouTube app on your phone and literally go to the Shorts feed, which is just all vertical short form content, right? That you can scroll through. They're going to continue to make that way better. You know, over time, I'm sure they'll be able to find people that can replicate the TikTok algorithm, right? Like in a year from now, if TikTok is banned, it'll be a distant memory like Vine was, you know, and we'll all be like, remember those TikTok days? In like a year or two, YouTube Shorts is going to be just as sophisticated as TikTok is now, I would think.
Agreed.
And so, you know, it's going to be a short-term thing, but it does really stink for the creators who have made a living basically off of TikTok. But it's a blip, you know, it's a blip on the radar of life, and we'll get through it pretty quick, I think.
I watched a documentary on Netflix this past weekend about infinity, literally just like a whole documentary about the concept of infinity. And TikTok is just a little blip. It's just a little blip on the timeline.
Now, where we don't want it to go, though, is the government deciding, hey, you know what? In addition to TikTok, we're gonna just ban whatever we don't like now, right? And then it becomes a little bit scarier than just a blip. But I think China is a unique situation, maybe, right?
Yeah. You mentioned at the beginning of this, right? Like China kind of has like when you think U.S. and China, you don't necessarily think best friends, right? Like that's not what anybody thinks. And so I think like this app and the company was in a unique situation to where the US could utilize the general outlook between the two countries to make a big decision like this, to where it's like, if this was like an app from like France or maybe like an app from Spain or something, I feel like you'd have a lot more pushback on like bans and like and things like that. Whereas like with China, I think everyone's kind of like, well, I don't want my data going to China.
Right. So and I think the governments would have a conversation about it, right? If it were like any other country, but it's just like with China, like we just can't even have talks on stuff like this, apparently.
Yeah. Exactly. I think, Matthew, did you have like some sort of like fun interaction planned out for us here today?
I do, yeah. So this should be fun. So I've actually gathered a couple TikTok videos before they all disappeared.
Meta. I mean, not meta technically, but meta TikTok.
We need to come up with a new word for meta, because Facebook have just like completely killed every meaning of that word.
Inception.
I like it. Love that movie.
Great movie.
It is a great movie. So yeah, I've got a bunch of videos.
Wow, Matthew and I just agreed on a movie that we like.
I know. Well, no, I also love Gladiator. We've got a lot in the stable.
You also love Gladiator. Okay.
Yeah, I love that. So. Right. But yeah, let's stop there while we're on a win streak, shall we?
Stop while you're hot. Yeah.
We named like 400 other movies that we just don't agree on.
So yeah, I've got a bunch of stuff for us to look at, and just get your thoughts on it. I think this is it is overtly political, especially in how it's being talked about. So a lot of people aren't necessarily coming at it from the angle of, we need to think about how advertising works and where are we going to put our ad money. This is ultimately coming down to an ethical, right or wrong, like freedom of speech, and coming from a non-American, this is very much a part of life outside of America, where governments say we don't want to use this, so we're not going to use it. So this is very unique to America, but I think it's a conversation well worth having anyway. So that's my 2 cents. I'm gonna present my screen.
Well, let me tell you what's going on with the TikTok. I have a very opinionated explanation for what is going on with TikTok.
Okay.
TikTok was eating Silicon Valley's lunch. They were taking all the ad money from Instagram, from Twitter, from Google. I'd say Google and Instagram and Facebook, just killing it, knocking it out of the park. So look at who is saying, "Oh, it's China and they're tracking everything and it's Communist Party." Dude, Facebook tracks you, Google tracks you, everyone tracks you all over the place. But all of a sudden TikTok is a problem? No, it's because they're eating their lunch, and instead of competing, because they've tried, no one can seem to create the TikTok algorithm and the thing that they have going there. It's what people want, the quick hits, the sing-alongs, etc. So they decided to lobby politicians and come up with this scam.
Okay, I halfway agree. I agree with everything he said, except for that the reasoning is ad revenue. I don't think the reasoning is ad revenue.
I second that. Yeah, I second that. He's right about like, okay, yeah, all the other platforms track you. I mean, that's all like dead spot on. But yeah, I mean, like, sure, did TikTok take some ad revenue? Absolutely, but enough to like make it this? No, not this. That's not.
I would even argue that they really didn't hardly take any ad revenue. Like, that's a scarcity mindset, right? Like, if a platform works, then you add more budget to allocate to that platform. You don't necessarily take away from something else that's working, right? If a company tells me I want to spend, $10K a month on Facebook and Instagram ads, and then TikTok comes out and they're like, should we test TikTok? I'll be like, sure, let's throw a couple extra $100 at it, right? Like, I'm not saying let's take away from something that's working and test there, right?
Right, yeah. And the only way I think that actually like it does end up that way is if, like, let's say that you are running an e-com store, someone says, hey, let's test TikTok budget, you test it, it crushes. Then you're like, oh snap, our ROAS is way better here than it is on Instagram. So I think in that scenario, sure. But like, how many people have you and I talked to where it was like, we tried TikTok and it's better than everything else we ever tried? Like, no,
Zero.
Like, that doesn't. Yeah, zero.
Now, what he said about sort of like the algorithm and the fact that the companies can't recreate it and all of that, yes, and that's a threat to their actual like presence in the marketplace, right? Hours viewed, watch time, all of that stuff. And they can probably see the writing on the wall, like, hey, if we don't figure this out and TikTok continues to grow at this rate, we're going to lose. So yes, they would lobby politicians. They would put this out into the market of like, they got your data, all of that stuff. But I just don't think it's an ad revenue thing yet.
Yep. Totally agree with that.
All right,
Matthew. What else we got?
Apparently Montana is going to ban TikTok. And I'm not just talking government files, I'm talking a full ban, the entire state of Montana. I knew the rumblings around the Restrict Act had been a little too quiet lately, and now I know why. I guess they figure the Restrict Act is moving just a little bit too slowly, so now we're just going to start banning TikTok on a state-by-state basis, huh? I was reading an article about it, and a couple things jumped out to me. One, this wouldn't take effect until January of 2024. Also, unlike the Restrict Act, where if you kept the app on your phone out, once the government restricted it, where it was going to fine the user an amount of money, in Montana, it looks like they're going to fine either the app or the app store $10,000 a day. Also, they're going to need to figure out how to do this on phones within a state limit, because as far as I know, how do you restrict an app in just a specific state? One thing I do know is this isn't the time to be quiet. Call your representatives, call them, tweet them, beep them, any way you can reach them. This is not the time to lay down, and Montana is just the beginning.
I love that these videos are on TikTok. First off, that just shows the power of the platform, right?
Was that Kim Possible?
Call me, beat me if you want
to reach me.
Yeah, they said beat, not beat. So please do not assault your state representative.
Don't beat me, please. Dude, so I mean, her point on like how can they ban it at a state level? Easy, IP addresses, like they can do that. But that's really interesting if she's right about the fines and how they would be fining the app in the app store and not the user, because users will just find a way around it. I mean, that's pretty easy, right? If there's no personal ramification.
Yeah, and so like, how is it the app's fault if the app is still in the app store? Like, wouldn't you know what I mean? Like why would the app get fined for still being in a specific state? That doesn't sound like it's the app's fault. Like
Right.
shouldn't that be
Right.
like a problem with the store or like the downloader, right?
The state. I mean, if the state's trying to ban
Yeah.
it, you know.
Yeah, or the state.
Well, it's sort of
exactly,
like, so actually what a good example here would be like sports betting apps. So when I log into like DraftKings to place a sports bet, there's states where it's not legal. So I've been traveling before and tried to like log into my DraftKings, and it says after I open the app, I already have the app, I open it up, and then I try to log in, it says you're in a state where this isn't supported. Like it forces you to use geolocation, right, to use the app. There's another concern because right now you can tell apps like TikTok, I don't want you to know where I am. But if this were to pass, you would almost have to tell TikTok your location, which is another piece of data
work
that now
without active
Data
location.
has.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a funny rabbit hole I haven't thought of before. Hey China, we don't want you to have our data. So what we're gonna do is turn on location services for the app so that when we log in, you know exactly what state and city and zip code we're in.
Well, hey, at least it's going through Oracle first now, right? So.
Yeah, true.
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
All right, this is Gary V.
Everyone was like a little surprised at like how much I didn't give a shit if TikTok disappeared off the face of the earth. If TikTok gets banned in America, it's actually a good thing for us because everyone's going to be confused where all the attention goes. And we're going to be spending our time on Clapper or on Instagram or on Snap Spotlight. Like, I'll give you a bigger one. Forget about TikTok. If all 9 social networks disappeared tomorrow, I would be thrilled because the attention has to go somewhere. I'm not emotional about the distribution product. I'm emotional about common sense and attention. Social media just happens to be the place where the attention is now. If this was a 1968 conversation, I would be screaming at the top of my lungs about how important television commercials are. Anytime there's a shift of attention, we have grown.
I like Gary, man. I like Gary.
Yeah.
It's an oversimplification of like a lot of things, but he's totally right. I mean, it's like people are going to still spend time wanting to be entertained, right? Either way. So whether it's there or elsewhere.
For sure. And he's like coming from like a mindset of abundance in that he's not like, yeah, like we're doomed if this happens. He's like, no, what that means is that it creates a huge opportunity for whatever that next thing is. And you better believe that whatever that next thing is, I'm going to be on that and I'm going to be ahead of the game. Right. Like that's kind of his whole MO. And
he's the guy who predicted TikTok like was going to blow up anyways. When it was called Musical.ly, like 8 years ago, he was like all over it. He was like, this is going to be huge, guys. Musical.ly, get on Musical.ly. Like, you know, I know it's weird that you're singing along to songs or whatever, but like, this is going to be huge. And then look at it now. It's got a good track record. Just to round things out here at AdClass, banning TikTok's not going to mean a whole lot to us if it does happen. But I think Gary V's point is the best point that we can all walk away with, which is basically like, there are still eyeballs and attention spans out there, and they're going to go somewhere. Yep. So you got to be prepped for the next big move.
Exactly. That's a great final thought. It's a great final thought.
If you like advertising and you like what you heard here today, please follow the podcast. Please download it. Please rate it. We would love to hear from you guys. And if you want to learn how to run ads for profit, right, totally free, and you're like, hey man, this sounds fun, I'd like to like work from home maybe, or you know, do my own thing, make a little money on the side running some ads, check out our free Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/free ad class. That you're gonna find us there. It's totally free. We'd love to hear from you guys and just join the community.
Yes. All right, guys, thanks for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode. See you.
Peace.